welcome to the Dr. Music Podcast, where today, sitting in with me, I have Mr. Carl Baldassarre. Carl is a guitarist, composer, and an educator. After being in a few bands in his youth, Carl took a path in life that had him as a highly sought-after private equity manager. And now, after decades of music tapping him on his shoulder, Carl has responded to that little devil uh, and changed course once again, becoming a teacher, a performing artist, and quite a popular podcaster with his great Professor of Classic Rock podcast, which I so enjoy. Carl has just released his inaugural solo album called Grand Boulevard, and it is so grand. We got to get out there and hear this thing. He's here to tell us all about it. Carl, thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You know, I look at the title, Grand Boulevard, and this is a grand outing for you. It's what, 16 tracks, I think, like,
Yeah.
and so much different stuff. It's just a grandiose kind of thing. You got to be terribly excited to get this out there for everybody.
I really am. I mean, it really sort of buttons up that whole experience, the first time, the musical ideas come to you, and then you go through the whole process of writing and recording, and then you just go through the production side of it, getting it all packaged and wrapped up. And to have it all completed and have it out there and start getting feedback on it. And I'm really excited about the shows that are coming up. I mean, it feels really, really good, to be honest with you.
It has to, because you talk about the recording process and stuff, and we're going to go through that. You didn't just you didn't do this in your bedroom. you know this was a grandiose, again, and it's going to be a word we hear a lot in this interview. It was a big undertaking for you. But let's start at the beginning for you. What was life like for you as a kid? A lot of music in the family. Did you grow up around music all the time?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was a musical family per se, but I was very fortunate in a couple of sense. Number one, growing up in the 60s, and then in the early 70s. I mean, what a great time
Oh
to
yeah.
be, in your imprint mode in your life, musically. And yeah, so music was all around me in that regard. I certainly was receptive to it. People often ask me, how'd you get into music? And the answer is, it got into me,
All right.
right from my earliest
Perfect.
recollection, right? And the other thing that I had going for me is that I had two older sisters. One was considerably older. And so they were on the front line, with the Beatles and the Moody Blues and Deep Purple, when all these great artists were creating all these tributaries of music, and they were turning me on left and right. And, by the time I was 10 or 12 years old, I had been exposed to so much great cutting edge music that I think that time period and having the access through older siblings really made a huge impression on me. So I think that was kind of my formative years.
Okay, yeah, I can relate with that because I have two older brothers, 7 and 9 years
Okay.
older. So they were teenagers. They decided to take me to some shows when I was 8 years old. So
Exactly.
Kiss, Pink Floyd, ELP. Uh,
Ooh.
when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. So I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for them. So I can totally relate with what you're saying there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them and for that time period.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now you stepped away, decided to actually do something that made some money, and you could live not on a bench, but with with a roof over your head. It's the artist thing is hard to come by, so you made a choice to step away a little bit. Um, you did that for a very long time and then step back into it. How difficult was it for you to immerse yourself in music again after spending, a lot of your life, maybe not away from it, but to actually make a career, start another career? That had to be
Yeah.
pretty difficult.
Yeah, well, it wasn't actually, because so I started out, as a professional musician touring for 4 years. I had a record contract when I was 19. So I'd been in the business. I mean, it's all I ever knew because I was on my own at 17. And I, that's all I could do to make a living, was to follow what I had already been sort of curated to be as a child, was a professional musician. So I did that. And then I really had two careers, even though a lot of time put into sort of stabilizing, my life and my family, because I didn't want my kids to go through what I went through as a child. It was a really difficult upbringing. We were extremely poor, and my family was struggling with a lot of different issues. And as I said, I was on my own at 17. So I made the conscious decision to try to, sort that out. But I didn't leave music. I actually kind of just switched things around. I had the day job, if you will, and I was really good at it. It was a lot of fun. And it, in some ways, kind of scratched the itch of being a composer, because, strategy and solving problems for, companies or businesses, they're really just people, right? And I'm a natural born leader, natural born band leader, I should say. And funny enough, is I was really good at making harmony with notes, but I'm also good at making harmony with people. And so it kind of, one thing led to another, and it kind of kept going on and on. I was very successful at it. But all during that time, I kept going on with my studies in music as well, conservatory studies where I could find the time. And then I did have a progressive rock band. We didn't tour very much because my work schedule wouldn't allow me to, but I had a band called Syzygy, which really received a lot of acclaim around the world, and we charted in Europe, and it was a really fun project, but allowed me to really moonlight in music in a very, very serious way. And that kind of smoothed and eased the beast that is always lurking after me, which is to keep going back full time into music. So I basically I wrote a song about this on another album that's not been released yet, called Right Back Where I Started From. And basically it was really easy because I never left completely, number one. And number two, it's just basically going back to where I had been all along, and I was kind of in the background evolving and progressing, if I could use that word, with my studies and so forth. So it was always there, and it was sort of a relaunch of kind of that part of my life. And I have to say that experience, talking about grand journeys and grand boulevards, it was really interesting how when I went back to, really start writing in a different way, not progressive rock or not classical, but writing for songs, that all that experience, came out. We might talk about the album, but, a lot of that time is now reflected, in almost like a diary on the track list of Grand Boulevard. So it just it's really cool, though, to be 100% back to right where I started.
It is great. It's great for us out here too. You get a little bit more of you. It's fantastic, and yeah, that was a perfect way to describe the record. It feels like a life lived as you progress through this record. I hear a big connection with Spain. And there's some Latin music. There's a little bit of reggae sound there. This is a well-traveled record, and then it feels like somebody's life, and that would be yours, right?
Yeah. I had a chance to live in Europe for a while, and live on the East Coast, New York, and just travel a lot for business purposes and music, and all that's come out. Somebody once said to me, that you live life going forward, but you understand it looking backwards. And when fellows like us, if we get to this great gray crown of glory, you wind up, and if you've lived a life observed, it makes it a lot easier to kind of put things in perspective. And that really is what songwriting is to me. It allows me to sort of lay out all of this stuff that when you look backwards, what was meaningful, what was learning, what was painful, what was joyful, all those things. And I think as you touch on the genre shifting, that allowed me to set these stories, in any genre that would carry the story along the best way. And if I may keep riffing for you here, the other nice thing about growing up in the 60s and the 70s, you and I were really lucky because a lot of artists back then were allowed to evolve. I mean, you and I remember I Want to Hold Your Hand. How do you explain the walrus? How
Right.
did Beatles go from point A to point Z? So many bands did that, Genesis or whatever. And so we got accustomed to and exposed to, and if we paid attention, we got exposed to the concept of true progression, true evolution, right?
Yep.
And so that really has always been a part of my writing style. I'm most excited about the next thing, learning the next genre, learning the next element of the craft. And it's so fun to be able to have those tools in your toolbox to set music to, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah.
Totally. It is. It really is. It's great. We get so much of that on the record, which is great because I see a lot of artists will channel. They think they need to be focused, which focus is always a good thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but a little too much focus sometimes takes away from the variety or the journey of a record. I believe this is a really pleasant journey. It takes me places. I really That's one thing I enjoy most about this record is I go from place to place and I have an experience in each track, and it's really pleasurable. So it's like taking a trip. It's a beautiful thing.
That's so awesome to hear. I mean, I knew it was going to be a bit of a risk, by not kind of narrowing the focus for it. But
Yeah.
it just was. I just wrote every piece based on what I thought the song needed, and I didn't care about that merchandising part of it.
Right.
And hopefully, people that have ears to hear and like to listen with sort of immersive listening, might find something in there, might find a space, might find a world that really they can connect to. So I view it strategically as sort of diversifying,
Yeah.
diversifying, my audience a little bit, because if you don't like rock and roll, look out, because here comes some Eastern or Celtic or whatever, here it
Right.
comes.
Right. I don't know. I love that journey in a record, and maybe that's the old school in me, where I put it on track one, and it starts somewhere, and then it goes over the mountains and down the valleys and ends up in another place. I like that. I really want to go somewhere from track to track, and this does that. It's a full record. It's a full journey, and I feel like I'm part of your life, which that's really a nice thing. It's a warm human element to it.
Mm.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I care a lot about visualization because I think the one thing that helped lift me out of, as I said, a pretty tough upbringing was the ability to imagine things. And I had a very strong way of manifesting things in my mind. And so I think about when I write about a character, I I consider about it being there's a set piece, what's the staging that I want to have, as we say as songwriters, like let's put some furniture in it, let's have something tangible
Right.
that people can kind of feel and see, and so I do write that way very, very deliberately.
Yeah, that's great, and it comes through. It really does. I feel like I'm living inside of these songs, and
Nice.
it's really nice. It's very much a warm pleasure. Um, you do the YouTube channel, Professor of Classic Rock. It's fantastic what you do. I love what you do. Probably my favorite episode, one of my favorite records, Deep Purple's In Rock.
Mm.
Love what you did with that. There's so much of this great material that you share with us you know, in an educated kind of, an educator type of rhythm to it, a lot of it. It's very informative. And you're just a warm guy to hang with, and it's really great. It's such a great show. People need to go see it. There'll be a link in the description here. Uh, did you ever feel like it was does it detract from the music, because I know it's a big undertaking to do the channel. um is it does it inspire you musically, or does it detract a bit? You know, is it a
That's
little
a that's a really
off the
that's a
track?
really that's a very insightful question because it does both, honestly.
I thought so,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, right now, it's a full-time job, and I'm right now not full-time at it because, I'm releasing the album and I'm getting things standing some things up for these shows I'm going to be doing throughout the summer. So, there's only so much, you can do.
Right.
So that's where you have to be careful, to not get, what's primary is primary in my life. And what's primary is writing music and playing music. Okay. Now, I love educating. More importantly, I educate through shared enthusiasm because I'm an enthusiast and I love the experiences I've had with music, and I want people to be excited about it. So I do what it gives me is a couple of things. The YouTube channel, number one, it allows me to share my enthusiasm for the music that I so love. And number two, it allows me to actually have to study music and artists that I really didn't spend any time listening to. And as a guitar player, I think it's made my playing a lot better because, I do spend time on the channel because it's kind of riff oriented. So I'm focusing on playing the guitar parts. And so in order to, I really care about doing things excellently. I don't want to just shoot it. Yeah, I'd rather have no episode than, I'd rather have an excellent episode or no episode, right? So I'll sit down and I'll sit there and I will woodshed to try to get some of these parts for music for these guitar players that I don't play and learn their techniques. And I don't want to just get by. I want to really learn it. So I can spend a lot of time trying to get things up. And that is a great plus because it does help me, expand my horizons on the guitar. So there's gives and gets in life. And there's definitely this sort of, taffy pull that's going on between, my YouTube channel and my music, career as a composer performer. So I just try to balance it as best I can.
Yeah, and I know it's tough, because I mean there are people that do podcasting like your show. It's high end. You see it, and
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. Um, that's a full-time job for a lot of podcasters.
it
It
is. Yeah.
takes a lot of effort to do that. So to do both of these things it has to be difficult. I just wanted to recognize that for sure. And,
Yeah.
people tune into these things and they go, "Oh, it's a show," and then they watch it and it's cool, and then they leave. Realize that that show takes a very, very
Long.
long
Yeah.
time.
If you really, I have a tendency to, I think from my business background, I really care about the details.
Mhm.
I remember my time with, working with the senior people at Apple, and one of the COO once said to me, he goes, "We want to be the guys that finish the back of the drawer." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "We care about so many details." He said, "Imagine a furniture manufacturer, right? You pull out the drawer, you look at the back of the drawer. Is it a piece of like plywood or is it like finished cherry with stain and everything?
Right.
Nobody's going to see it, but we know it's there, and that makes the overall product better." And so when you look at my set, how it's evolved over the YouTube set, how it's evolved over the year or so that I've been doing it, 2 years or whatever it's been,
Right.
you can see I've been, you can just see all the detail that I try to put into the lighting, put into the camera angles, put into the scripting, put into
Yeah.
just everything. It's just getting little improvements. I'm trying to finish the back of the drawer because I care about it. You might not ever notice that. And
Right.
you'll never notice that sometimes it takes a week or two or three for me to muddle through a guitar technique
Right.
that I'm doing. And my job is to make you not even think about that. Make
Yeah.
just have you smile and get excited.
And that's it. You watch it, you get it, you smile and you get excited. It is. It's so much fun. It's such a great channel. It's please people. The link is down there. Check it out. Um, you have a Grammy-winning producer on this record, Phil Naish,
Yeah.
producing the album. Tell me a little bit about Phil. Now, I mean, I think there's two types of producers. There's the producer that says, "Ah, let's move this and put this here and we need another verse. An invasive type of producer that becomes another member of the band. And then there's the producer, the Rick Rubin type, I believe, where
Yeah.
he'll leave and let you do your thing, and he'll come in the end and tweak some things and turn some knobs and make it sound great. But he lets you do what you do. What type of producer is Phil?
He's more along the latter lines of that. He is involved. First of all, he's maybe one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met. Okay, and that was really important as to why I chose to work with him. He's got a resume and a track record, and he won't tell you. He won't tell you how many Grammys. I mean, he just literally has nothing on his wall. I start finding, oh my God, you played with this person. Oh my God, you did this. It's like
Yeah.
he's so humble. But so apart from all of that wonderful chemistry, he's one of the most talented musicians. So he's a playing producer. He's played a lot of keyboards on my album. And he's the type of person that you can be vulnerable with. And, that was important to me, that I could go in, show him some of the rough concepts of a song, which is the most embarrassing part sometimes of the song, when you're coming in, and he, like, for me, I always had the ability to see the potential of a song, even when I was just starting out. And it's kind of like people that can walk through an old, beat up old home and see the great bones and say, oh, this thing is going to be grand, right?
Right.
And Phil's that kind of guy. And so I would show him my dilapidated concepts, and he'd catch on. But he's a brilliant musician as well. I mean, he's got an ear. He's just great. We pounded so many of these things in, and I learned so many things from him. I would say a couple of them I really learned, because I wrote a lot of long form music. One of the great things about being a progressive rock guy is you don't have to really learn about how to end a song. You just keep going. You just keep writing. You run out of the song is over. You run out of ink.
Right.
But to write a 2 and 3 and 4 minute well-crafted song, it's just, for me, it was a new world. And he's so good at shaping, and there's so many little tricks that I learned from him, and how to shape a great piece of music into a song. And he had great instincts, whether it was lyrics, whether it was chords, and a phenomenal chord person. He had a great sense for hooks and for groove. And he was also excellent behind the glass. So when he was actually, working on vocals and things like that, makes the artist feel so comfortable and so relaxed. And he could coach a performance out of you that you didn't think was possible. He had the funniest humor. I mean, he had the funniest sense of humor and how to kind of keep things loose and get you great. Funny. I mean, I made a list. I stopped at 99, a list of all his funny sayings. They're hilarious, So I mean, it really was great to work with Phil. I mean, as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of Phil Naish.
See, and that's I think that's so important. For the artist to feel comfortable, to feel happy when they're recording it's their baby. You're giving birth to this thing. You want a doctor who's going to take care of you. So it's great to have a guy like that.
Yeah,
it's important to the record itself. Other than just the tweaking of the sound and the buttons.
Yeah.
So much human element to that. Now, like I say, the undertaking, grandiose recording studios here. We got Soul Train Sound Studios in Nashville. Sweetwater. I'm a Chicago guy, so that's fairly close, in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, right between you and I. I'm in Northeast Ohio, so
okay,
smack dab in the middle.
Yeah. And then, of course, the infamous Abbey Road. There another room better than that? I don't know.
No.
So
no.
What ultimately brings you to these studios? Phil's a guy, I'm sure he has his own home studio, right? You would think. Why not just record there? With all the technology, you probably get great sound from a Grammy-winning guy like Phil in his home studio. What takes you to Soul Train, Sweetwater, Abbey Road?
Yeah, criteria. I mean, a lot of famous rooms I had a chance to be in, but I spent most of my time at Abbey Road and the Sweetwater studio. Well, so it kind of goes back to Phil and then our engineer, Mark Hornsby. They had an affiliation with Sweetwater, which is kind of where I met them. I was interviewing producers and engineers, and I met the two of them because they'd worked together in Nashville a lot. And so I met with them, and I immediately felt great. They have a tremendous network, as you might expect, real pros. They've got a network of, with studios and engineers all around. And so both of them worked at Abbey Road. And so they had a trip scheduled to Abbey Road to do some string stuff. And I said, well, let me do some string arrangements, my first trip there, and one thing led to another. And I wound up doing like 5 albums of material there. I haven't released it, but I started writing like crazy. I wrote 2 full classical albums with the London Philharmonic at Abbey Road. Did a couple of rock, 3 rock albums there. None of them released yet, but wow. Yeah, the connection came through Phil and Mark, and once you go to Abbey Road Studios and work in that environment, you don't ever want to come home. I didn't come home for like 3 years. I didn't go.
Well, yeah, I mean that you say you wrote all that music and did all that music. It had to be inspired by being in that room, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it. If it wasn't there, you probably wouldn't have written the music.
Well, if you're sitting there, you're playing John Lennon's piano, which is still there, and you see his cigarette burns on the edge of the piano.
No way.
There's still a lot of songs that are coming out of that piano. I'm here to tell you. Same thing with Paul McCartney's piano, the one they call Mrs. Mills. It's this big old upright, and that's the one he did Lady Madonna on. I mean,
why are those there?
I know.
Crazy.
I know, it's just crazy. I mean, the studio 2, there's a few studios. Studio 1 is the big sound stage where they've done a lot of Star Wars and all that stuff. Right. Studio 2 is where the Beatles did all of their work from 62 to 68, 69. And that's the one I worked in mostly. And that room should not sound as good as it sounds. It's a big rectangle box, looks like a gymnasium. The control room's up a flight of stairs. And it should sound horrible, but when you light up in that room, it's magisterial. So much so, and they know it. They haven't touched a thing. If you look at the pictures of me recording there and look at the pictures from 1962 with the Beatles recording there, the floor is the same. The wall treatments are the same cushions on the wall, the same clock, the same doors. They just sweep the floor, man. They don't dare mess with that room. Now, of course, the technology in the control room is completely, state of the art, but there's something magical about it. And everybody, I don't care how many awards you've won, Oscars, BAFTAs, they were all in the room when I was there. People just come back because it's such a magical place. It's just one of those places.
It's crazy. Yeah, I talked with Ken Scott. I had Ken Scott on the show, engineered a lot of that stuff, and basically spent so much time at that studio. He kind of said the same thing. It is what it is. It's it's just the magic in that room that you can't, it's just there, and we don't touch it. Don't mess with perfection.
You can still hear the echo of Eleanor Rigby. When I get the string sections going in that room, it's like, wait a minute, still hear Eleanor Rigby going on.
It's got to give you pause. Just when it kicks in, there's that slight murmur.
Yeah, I mean, for people like you and me who grew up, I remember I was only 5, but remember watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and then following the Beatles. It's like, I think there's an added sort of juice for someone like you or me to actually, you grow up listening to all this music. You hear about Sgt. Pepper and Abbey Road, but then you go there and you're actually working. It's like, pinch me, please. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm definitely a fan before I'm anything else,
And that's great. And same here. When I do these things, I come in as a fan, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Me neither.
It's so fulfilling. It really fills my heart to do that. So as a musician, I can really relate with how that must feel. You're gonna be right. Brand new video.
Yeah.
Song influenced by Zoltar, of course, the fortune telling machine in the East Village, right?
You do your homework. That's pretty good.
Tell me the story. You got to tell me that story.
Yeah, so I was in. I spent some time in East Village and on St. Mark's Place, which is just down the road from the tenement house that's the cover of Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti. Just 2 blocks down the road from there, there's a outdoor. It's not there anymore. I was there a couple weeks ago. They moved it. I don't know where it's at. But it's the Zoltar Fortune Telling Machine, which was the fortune telling machine in the movie Big. Tom Hanks did back in the 80s or whatever, right? And so I was just knocking around there, and I just put in my quarter or whatever it was, and Zoltar did the thing with the hand and pushed the ticket to me, and the ticket said, "If you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right." And I thought, wow, that puts into a short little ticket phrase exactly how I thought as a kid when things looked really, really hopeless in my life as a child, that through thought, you know what I mean? You will manifest whatever your thoughts are. And if you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right as well.
Right.
I said, well, I got to write a song about that,
How cool. How cool is that? For what, a quarter, right? You got a song out of it?
25 cents. I got a great song.
Not bad. Not bad. Another track, and you go through this on the website, and there'll be a link in the description. The inspiration behind the songs, and we so love that as fans, because we don't, a lot of times we hear the songs, we love the songs. To hear a little background about where that came from adds so much when we hear it. It's nice that you share that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're wrong, dead wrong. Inspired by an AC/DC concert with your sons. Now, you say that you didn't think, you weren't sure you were going to appreciate it as much as you did.
Yeah.
Why is that? Are you not a fan of the AC/DC stuff?
No, I wasn't a fan. I was respectful of their music, but I've always been so busy with my own music my whole life, so it wasn't that I wasn't a fan, but my sons were really fans, and I had been on a long journey through Europe, and they came to visit me, and I was doing a lot of classical stuff at the time, and I was dragging them around because when I write classical music, especially, I'm a bit of a method actor. So not to bore you, but I literally will spend months and months and months and months just to study one composer. And I will go to where they lived, where they slept, where they died, where they ate. I eat what they ate.
Awesome.
I'll play Beethoven's piano and get arrested, which I did. True story. But so I'm dragging my boys around, and they're completely embarrassed by all the crazy things I'm doing, going through this process. I was studying Brahms and Bruckner at the time, and they were so nice. I took them to all these classical concerts. I even took them to one, the Musikverein, and I bought in an antique shop. I bought an ear trumpet because Beethoven was going deaf, and a lot of people in conservatories complain about Beethoven's orchestration, about too much brass and this, that, and the other. I wanted to hear the world like yours, so here I am in Vienna taking my boys with my brass antique ear trumpet, my score in my left hand, my ear trumpet, awesome. And they put up with so much of my crap. So I surprised them with 2 tickets, and third one for me, to an AC/DC concert. I had seen that they were coming and playing at a soccer stadium in Vienna. So I took them. They were really, really excited. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to dig this or whatever, and we're walking towards
in your defense, you were in that world, the Brahms world, and so right. If you weren't there, you would have had a different view of it. But you were absorbed, you were immersed.
I was totally absorbed.
Yeah.
But so I'll cut the story short. But I get him to the concert. Right, it was hilarious walking into this soccer stadium filled with a bunch of inebriated Viennese people, and it was. So we're sitting there, and I could just tell by the size of the stage and this is going to be a spectacle. They come out. The introduction is absolute, just like Super Bowl halftime explosions and everything.
Right.
And it's so freaking loud. The first thing I do was survival. I start running around grabbing paper to put in my ears, you know. And I'm thinking, I'm fearing for my life. You know, they're beating my body up with sound waves. I almost had an involuntary bowel movement. And but by the third song, I looked down at my son, because it was Axl Rose was singing with them on that tour. And I look at both my sons and I say, this is effing awesome. I could not, this whole crowd, they had this whole 60,000 people completely in their hand. And they worked like anybody's business. They didn't cheat anybody out of anything. And I remember laughing on the way in, because they were selling for $20 these like little devil horns that would light up, you know, and I'm laughing. On the way out, I'm going, so how much? Yeah. I go, so how much is a pair of those devil horns? As I'm getting,
I can't remember. I didn't want to know.
I was ready to buy them. I mean, it was really, so anyway, I had to write that rock anthem, you know, You're Wrong, Dead Wrong, because just to see the stadium singing along with their fists in the air, I'm thinking, wow, that's what rock is. It's so powerful and galvanizing, and it's incredible. Really incredible. So that was my little ode to AC/DC.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's great. It's a great song, and any AC/DC fan would be proud for sure. That's it's pretty great. And on the other hand, on the other side of that, Love Never Dies, piece you wrote for musical theater. After seeing Hamilton, we hear a wonderful, beautiful female voice on that. And I want to ask about that. But first, is writing for musical theater something that you'd like to do more of in the future?
I think as a progressive rock guy, you think about that. You always visualize things. You think about the days of seeing Jethro Tull in his prime, you know, in their prime.
Theatrical, progressive.
It's very theatrical. So I'm always thinking about staging. When I saw Hamilton, it took me back to kind of, you know, opera. And I started like, this is something I haven't really done. And the tricky part about that song, the hardest thing about that song to write, was it's a duet, and having the overlapping melodies and words at the same time, and they're not singing the same words, they're overlapping. There's a real art to that. Like, how do you craft one consonant that's hitting with another consonant with two different words, two different melodies? How do you make that work over time? And I remember studying Beethoven's Fidelio. Beethoven wrote one opera in his whole life, and it's one of the greatest operas of all time. And he had 6 voices going at one time, 6 different lines, 6 different melodies, and it works. And you can tell, and there's a whole art to how do you make that happen. So it was a challenge to do that. I wanted to tell that story. It was a story about my childhood and about reflecting back on, you know, dealing with my mother, who unfortunately died when I was very young. And I wanted to tell that story. I know I'm not alone in that story, communicating with someone on the other side and thinking about it, wishing, you know, you would have had a few more years. So maybe, you know, your deceased parent could have seen you growing up as a man, and, you know, their life would have been better, whatever. But it was such a visual song. And I just imagined the staging of it. And when I saw Hamilton, it reminded me, you know, just how powerful like a leitmotif is, where a character has a particular melody or a particular rhythm, you know. And so I did that kind of concept to it. And I would love to, you know, someday, if I had another lifetime, to stage and write an entire musical. But I do think I write in that vein. I do think you could actually put on a musical of Grand Boulevard, or, you know, something like that. I think it could work, you know. But that piece was written specifically for that. And it's a really, really, it's impactful to me. I'm glad that you even mentioned it. I was kind of hesitant to put it on there. It's very personal.
And the placement of it is perfect. I mean, I mean, just, you know, it leaves me with that poignant kind of sign off. It's just
and it's
beautiful.
The interesting, we thought a lot about, I mean, every song and every position on the album, like the old days, you know, when we had vinyl records. Back then, the artists really cared about what's the opening track of that side, what's the closing track. The person's going to get up, flip over the platter. They're going to have another open. You know, you think about how things sequence and these little acts and these little plays. And boy, I wrestled over that whole sequencing of Grand Boulevard. And where do you put this piece that's so different, but yet it fits in a way, and making it to make sense. And sort of the ending of the song doesn't have a harmonic resolution where you really kind of want one. And I think it sort of leaves you feeling somewhat content, but also thirsty, I hope.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Yeah. It's a sign off, but it is different. So, it tells me that maybe there's a different direction coming. Uh,
Mm.
so there's a question to it. There's a little question mark to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It ends with kind of a question like, what happens next?
Yeah. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And who is that beautiful female voice we hear?
Yeah. That's Melanie Cooksey. She's does a lot of work for Disney. And
Gorgeous.
she's got a great voice. And Terry White was the vocal singer. They do a lot of work in Nashville. That was one of the Soul Train sessions. And yeah, they're just killer. They're just killer singers. And I was looking for the right duet to do that, and they killed it.
Yeah.
They killed it.
It was sensational. It really is a great thing to hear, and especially like I say, the placement of it is perfect. Uh,
Yeah.
you've done a lot. You've been a lot of places. You've worked with great people. Is there something in your life that you really want to do but haven't had a chance? A bucket
Oh.
list item.
There's so many, there's so much more music and so many more songs and pieces that I want to write.
Yeah, I hear there's 3 or 4 from Abbey Road.
They're already written
Crazy.
and ready to go. But to me, even that's kind of yesterday's news. I just recently wrote a string quartet for my oldest son, Teddy Baldassarre. Shout out to Teddy, because he's got the world's largest YouTube channel in mechanical watches, and he's the one that convinced me to try to do a YouTube channel.
Fantastic.
But I wrote him a string quartet, and just like last week I was thinking, because I got so many things I want to do, bucket lists, and one of them was it'd be so great to write a collection of string quartets that were variations on a rock theme, and take some of the great melodic material of the classic rock era and really give them very serious variation treatment. That would be so cool. That's never been done before. I think that would be really awesome. Plus, it would be an excuse to get back to Abbey Road.
Yeah, there you go.
But I
That
want
would
to
be
write.
great.
I want to write. Yeah, I kind of want to write an album. Like when I do the Deep Purple episode, I'm thinking, God, I want to write a song as if Deep Purple was back together. Let's write that album.
Yeah.
Or I want to write Led Zeppelin song. A Led Zeppelin album that they never wrote. I want to do. I always have these crazy. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want you.
And you kind of do that on the record too, Sansa Tarifa.
There's a couple. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
touches on the Kashmir thing big time. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that song done in the spirit of whoever. That song,
It is.
especially Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to hear and you're wrong, dead wrong, kind of in the spirit of AC/DC.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, let's hear it. Do it. Definitely. um, touring. Are you gonna be? I know you got a couple things happening. What's it look like for the future for you?
Yeah, so right now I've got some shows here in the United States to reveal the Grand Boulevard story. I'm in the process of actually, trying to get a larger sphere tour going. So hopefully we can do that. I'd like to follow this album up with my progressive rock album called Collinwood Yards, and love to tour with both of those records. It'd be pretty amazing. So send all the booking agents my way. Let's get this thing on the road. And
Yeah,
let's leave a mark, man.
for sure, man. That's great. Yeah, I'd definitely love to see you here in Chicago. That would be awesome, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to come. It's just a matter of getting things hooked up. It's not an
Yeah.
easy trade.
Nope, it's not. It definitely isn't. That's what I was saying. There's so many different components and moving parts to especially touring. That a lot of the fans just they don't realize what it takes
Yeah,
to actually get out there and get to your town. So yeah, we'll be patient and hopeful, and we hope everything works out. And I'd love to see you here in Chicago, man.
all right. Well, all right. You hear that, Chicagoans? Send me you venue owners. Come on now, let's put a string of shows together. I'll bring it.
Yeah, there's a venue out here, Ron Onesti at the Arcada Theater. I'm sure he'd love to have you. I'll have to Give
Send
them
them my way.
yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
blow the roof off the place.
absolutely. Very cool. Very cool. Carl, let's do this again, man. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time. Links will be in the description. Grand Boulevard is now available. It's streaming services available for sale on the website. Check it out. Check out the YouTube channel, Professor of Classic Rock. You're doing so much, man. It's hard to keep up.
Man, thank you so much. And I give you a shout out and really tell you how much it means to independent artists to have someone like you that is so dedicated about, making sure that the word gets out there, and your love and enthusiasm for, artists, music is really, really appreciated. Thank you. It's not easy work, and I really am grateful.
Oh, and thank you so much. It's what you do is a gift. That's how I feel about all of this is these are all gifts that were,
Yeah,
given to me by these minstrels, and it's like I
right.
so appreciate it. Because
Yeah.
I can't imagine life without this sound
Yeah.
in the world. Really,
Right on, man.
it's a gift,
Hey, thank
man.
you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Let's do
Okay.
it again, Carl. Take care.
Okay. Anytime.
All
Anytime.
right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.